Welcome to a new episode of the Sox Machine podcast, part of the Foul Territory Network. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and the Major League Baseball trade deadline for the 2026 season is over as the White Sox made some moves as they acquired everything on their shopping list. They wanted a starting pitcher, they wanted another reliever, they wanted a catcher. They also added another player to the squad that we weren't expecting before the deadline. Here's Chicago White Sox general manager Chris Getz explaining the moves and the rationale behind those moves that he made before the August 3rd trade deadline.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for getting together this evening after the trade deadline. The trade deadline. I feel like I've gone through a day-night doubleheader myself, but couldn't be more excited with what we were able to accomplish. Obviously, you're at the mercy of other clubs and having deep talks and dialogue, and a lot of good ideas, wild ideas, bad ideas come about in those conversations. But what we were trying to accomplish was certainly a starting pitcher, which we were able to accomplish with Luis Castillo, Brenton Doyle, someone that's going to help in the outfield, Brazoban, a strong reliever. It's going to help our pitching staff, and then Joey Bart from a catching standpoint. So, going into this trade deadline, you don't exactly know who you're going to be able to acquire, but to be able to get an experienced starter like Luis Castillo, a really strong defender with what we feel like is untapped offensive potential in Brenton Doyle and Joey Bart, adding depth to our catching group and someone that is experienced and is only going to help. And then, of course, Brozoban, that is who is someone that's going to help our bullpen. So feel really good with what we were able to accomplish. And, I feel like we're well positioned for the remainder of the year, and we'll see what happens.
One of the goals that Chris Getz and the Chicago White Sox front office had was trying to keep their top 10 prospects unless there was a deal out there that had made sense, but the White Sox just didn't find that deal.
Yeah, last couple of days and including today, very open-minded we were. But, we did want to preserve our top prospects, in which we felt like we were able to accomplish and make measurable steps forward with the talent on our major league club. So, we've got a lot of players that were asked for from our prospect group. I understand that it's not that we were dismissive and unwilling. It just didn't make sense with some of the asks. Yeah, I mean, it's very clear that, a Caleb Bonham or a Billy Carlson, very attractive pieces. But then with us wanting to maintain the group that we've been able to grow on the minor league side, that's only going to help us in the future. We felt like we were able to accomplish not only adding wins to our major league club, but also maintaining prospect depth.
With acquiring Joey Bart, the Chicago White Sox and Chris Getz have to make a decision on the catching situation between Drew Romo and Edgar Caro. Getz explains his rationale behind that decision making.
So, in the meantime, we are optioning Edgar Caro with Joey Bart being the addition here. So we'll do a combination of he and Romo. Edgar Caro's done a nice job since he's come back. Really, he's helped us win games, and he's working on both his receiving and offensive game. Has taken, a step forward for where it was earlier. But we've maintained that depth. I would say when Kyle Teal comes back, obviously that'll be the biggest boost. We look forward to that time. In the meantime, we feel like Joey and Romo are going to, set us up for, wins here when it comes to the month of August. But in the meantime, we are optioning Edgar Caro.
There were lots of quality rental starting pitchers in the sense that they're rentals because they're going to become free agents after the 2026 season. We explained in the past couple episodes, Robbie Ray was a target of mine. He went to San Diego. Kevin Gossman went to Chicago, but to the Cubs and not the White Sox. I still think that would have been a great addition for the White Sox team. But the White Sox didn't acquire any of those rental starting pitchers, and Chris Getz explains why.
Plenty of names out there that we felt like could really help us. The asking prices and looking at what some of those returns were, like we just couldn't match up, and some of that was our unwillingness to part with the top of our system, and also just how our system is set up right now. And we've got some guys that are various, or I should say, very obvious candidates, like at the top, top 100 guys. There is a little bit of gap to the next group. And so, you look at some of those returns. I think that there were some players that were in between, that existed in other organizations that we weren't able to provide. So you were forced into topper end guys. So, it was kind of just a victim of how we're set up right now. In the future, who knows how we would play that out? But based on what we've been able to accomplish right now, where we things are, where we feel like things are going, it just felt like it was the right move.
Now that the trade deadline is over, Chris Getz's belief in his team continues to grow, especially with what the White Sox have accomplished in their past two series against the Yankees and Rays, and what lies in front of them this week against the Red Sox and Guardians.
They compete, against anyone. Obviously, you look at what we did with the Yankees, those final two games, and taking 2 out of 3 of the Tampa Bay Rays. It still, like, objectively, when you line up with some of these clubs and you look at the names on the other club versus our club, I'm sure there are people that, might choose the other club versus us, but we go out there and we're not scared of anyone. We aren't. We're not. So, I just, we've accomplished a lot so far. I think we can do even more. They believe in themselves, and I believe in this group.
Today's episode is sponsored by the ASPCA Pet Health Insurance Program. Kratz, we love our pups.
We do. And I can't put Bella in a bubble. So you know what I'll do? I'll do the next best thing for her.
That's right. The ASPCA Pet Health Insurance Program offers customizable accident and illness plans that can fit your budget, your lifestyle, and even your pet's particular quirks. ASPCA Pet Health Insurance has been around for almost 30 years and has covered over 1 million pets. And when it's time to submit a claim, it's easy. Just use their app and receive reimbursement for eligible vet bills directly into your bank account so you can get back to focusing on what really matters, and that's your pet. To explore coverage, visit aspcapetinsurance.com/FAL. That's aspcapetinsurance.com/FAL. Again, one more time, aspcapetinsurance.com/FOUL. This is a paid advertisement. Insurance is underwritten by either Independence American Insurance Company or United States Fire Insurance Company and produced by PTZ Insurance Agency Limited. The ASPCA is not an insurer and is not engaged in the business of insurance.
There are over 8 million drivers in the state of Illinois. With that many people on the road, accidents are bound to occur. I'm attorney Howard Ankin, and if you or someone you care about has been involved in an auto, rideshare, or trucking accident, I'm here to help.
He has your number in his phone!
Call my office for a free consultation at 312-6-million. I'm here when you need me. Injury law made personal, that's Ankin Law.
And now continuing the conversation with me on the White Sox 2026 trade deadline activity is Sox Machine's managing editor Jim Margalus and beat reporter James Fegan. And hello, gents. What a busy last 4 days for us at Sox Machine. Chris Getz, I think, said it perfectly. Like, for him, it feels like he just played a day-night doubleheader, and I kind of feel the same way as well. Just the nonstop content creation, either the podcast front and all the columns that we've been writing on SoxMachine.com. So let's give our first impressions, our instant reaction to the White Sox trade deadline. I'll start with you, James. What's the first thing that you think of when it comes to the White Sox trade activity?
The first thing I think of,
Yes.
for the person says the day-night doubleheader and did a trade at 1:30 in the morning while I was trying to get 3 hours of sleep for my rescheduled flight. You want the first thing I thought? They there was points like a week out where I'm just like talking to people and like, hey, is this like a fair assessment of what you want? Starting pitcher, preferably as control, leverage arm, catcher. And they're like, yes, you're on it. They got starting pitcher, leverage relief arm, starting pitcher with control, and a catcher. And, I even framed it at the time like a catcher who's really just holding you over until Kyle Teals comes back. That's what they got. And then they pursued this need that I didn't even realize that they thought they needed in terms of Brenton Doyle. So, like, in terms of, like, objectives and knowing that they had to be dragged into this in some bit. Like, obviously, it's from June, they were kind of changing their tune in terms of, we have to treat this, team with respect like they're a contending team. And they came to this point, 3 games out in front. Biggest division lead in the AL is, my one esteemed voice in the Sox media sphere let me know. It's so and I think Chris gets even like elucidated like a further point of like maybe even like a self-critique of their system was what he said is like we have our top 100 guys that we could get big pieces with that we don't really want to touch, and then we have like what they traded, which was the tier of like Gabe Davis, Boston Smith, Mason Adams, and feeling like they were a little light in terms of like the territory between that might have helped them land some other pieces, or maybe makes a rental deal happen, and feeling like they had to, because they didn't want to use the big pieces, they kind of had to scrap it together with that more like middle tier guys who were in the teens of like an average systems prospect list. And because of that, everything's like there's like a little qualifier, and that's true for every player, but like it's a Luis Castillo, this guy's awesome, 3-time All-Star. It's in the press release. He's having a career worst season. You're kind of getting him because you're taking on a contract that the Mariners clearly see as onerous. For someone who's trying to make you better right away, you kind of have to fix it, or at least get it on track. I know they downplay the idea of like, oh, we need to overhaul his arsenal for him to be good again, but like that's got to be part of it, right? Like there are a lot of indicators that this like isn't the best he's looked, the worst he's looked. Is some people are saying. Bart is clearly a backup. Like this is someone who hasn't really been like a full-time, starting catcher for a contending team recently, or arguably for a long period of time. Like that said, it was paired off a pretty optimistic projection for Kyle Teal of saying he could be back by September 1st, or at least early next month. So that even maybe drills down further upon like why you don't get much more than like someone who's a good backup in that time. And also, we can't really hold like, why didn't you pay this for Tyler Stevenson when Tyler Stevenson doesn't move and the Reds don't trade him or Brady Singer? And generally, it's like, what were those weird guys doing rather than what were the White Sox not doing to get it? And even Brazoban, I think, is the most objective. Like, hey, here's a reliever who's pitching good right now. You can throw him in a leverage mix. That's almost a straightforward like that's all you're looking for when you trade a reliever. But it's like, oh, he's got years of control. Oh, he'll probably be 40 by the time he hits free agency because of his journey. Like, there's just a little thing. And then Brenton Doyle, like, he's obviously it's a reclamation project, and well, maybe not reclamation is the right word to use it. Like, they have hitting tweaks that they already have in mind with him, and that's great. And obviously, that's the story of their season is how many guys they've been able to fix offensively. But that's part of what's coming in as a guy who's one, just not hitting well this season because he's been injured and didn't hit well last year. But also, you're kind of banking on him coming in, and you're literally, DFAing Everson Pereira. So you're kind of saying like, we think he'd be better than him, and kind of sounds like they're counting on him to be better than Austin Hayes, because that's an option that's pressing on them, and they don't really have an answer for how that's going to fit in. It's not clear how it would. So it's all these like, I need to like, we need to like put some sort of governor or like a limit on Simpsons references here, but it's like a lot of slightly burnt like Sears activewear coming in where, what time and how burnt, like it's available now, and we'll see how burnt it is as time wears on. So it's like, yeah, you did everything you needed to do. you were shopping kind of in the discount aisle, and shopping well in discount aisle is obviously the story of your season to some degree. Like, hello, Miguel Vargas. But it's not like, hey, we're serious, like we're the Yankees and Dodgers. It's not how those teams are moving necessarily in terms of like how much they're kind of banking on the rebounds coming as these guys get in the house.
Well, that was a very detailed instant reaction to the White Sox trade deadline. So, Jim, I'm not sure how you want to follow that up, but what was your first impression after the
You just cut
deadline
my
came
mic
and went?
at times when you feel like it's really alive.
Okay, I could stop there if you want to conserve the airtime, but I would say they passed the 2020 test, as we talked about, in terms of they had needs and they acknowledged them and they did something for them, unlike in 2020 when they just got Gerard Dyson and that was it, even though everybody could kind of see it, the pitching was falling apart. There wasn't any level of denial there, even like getting Brenton Doyle, which is a little bit weird in terms of they had a Brenton Doyle on the roster previously in Derek Hill. They kind of had one in Everson Pereira. They don't have Austin Hayes is not Brenton Doyle in terms of playing center, but just they have a lot of right-handed outfielders, and to add another one when that wasn't necessarily in the cards because they have so many right-handed outfielders with precarious situations, be it a lack of options, be it service time, being able to reject assignments, that you didn't know exactly what they're going to do with them. And then Brenton Doyle shows up. But it was an acknowledgement that, hey, Tristan Peters is really scuffling. It's been a minor miracle what they've gotten from him so far. The fact that he's an all-star looks, it was incredibly unlikely. It might be one of those things that after the season, depending on how the rest of his second half goes, you might think like, how did that ever happen? That you might have to explain to future generations. But they acknowledged it by saying, hey, this guy might be struggling a little bit. He might be biting off finally more than he can chew. So we got to give him some help, and we don't trust Everson Pereira enough to cover center field the way we're asking Tristan Peters to cover center field. So with that in mind, they did acknowledge all of those deficits and did something to help. I will say that, to James's point about like the prospect tier that they couldn't deal from, I think it's another example of just not having an up and running international arm yet. They've made improvements, or they've changed leadership. They're going to get a new facility. It's a long process. It takes 5 to 7 years or something like that from, I think David Keller taking over to finally seeing results. But we've seen this before, whether it's how thin the prospect lists are, how the White Sox aren't able to supply reinforcements to their own roster or trade guys away the way the Padres are able to just make 6 trades, a deadline, and 7 more in the offseason with just how many interesting young talent they have at premium positions and pitching. So I think it's another example of missing that Jefferson Rojas type of just, they've done well enough with the draft. They've done well with reclamation projects, but not having that wing where like a third or more of your talent's supposed to come from, just kind of ignoring it and barely getting any kind of guys that surface to the majors. And if they do surface, like Lenyn Sosa, who is, has some talent, but is limited. It just limits what they can do with either acquiring players or supplying their own. So they had to work around it, and they did work around it. I was thinking like outlet mall, like a kind of a shopping spree where, everything's just not quite right to some regard, but they didn't, I don't think they overpaid for it. I mean, maybe Castillo, I guess we'll get to him, individually, might be the one where I think they might have paid too much just in terms of the obligation they're taking on. But I think they paid appropriate prices otherwise for players who might be able to help. And if they don't help, at least after the season, whatever happens, Getz can say, I tried something, maybe I could have been a little bit bolder, but also I didn't ignore it and hope things would get better and just cross my fingers that luck would carry us in the postseason. And then I could get away with just, having all the prospects I had and not having to make a choice.
Well, in the first part of this show, we heard from Chris Getz. I would kind of describe it as exhausted enthusiasm, as he's very tired working the phones and working the text messages. And I don't even know if GMs email each other, But I agree with you guys that as far as the White Sox shopping list, they checked off every item. It's just that other teams in the American League, I like the move by Tampa Bay getting Liam Hicks. Boston really believes after sweeping the Los Angeles Dodgers in LA to go get Adley Rutschman. That's a huge move for Boston's perspective. I'm not sure how much the New York Yankees have improved. I'm not sure the Houston Astros, they got Dalton Varsho, but their farm system is pretty much depleted. That's as best as they could do, and they had to trade one of their starting pitchers. But I feel like for White Sox fans after the deadline, there is room for wanting more from this deadline, especially with what Cleveland did. And with Cleveland getting Foster Griffin and Joe Adele and Nathaniel Lowe, that is going to put some pressure on the White Sox. So this upcoming weekend at home, that just increases the importance of that series between the White Sox and Guardians, as the White Sox still have the series lead. They have 4 wins while the Guardians have 3. So that tiebreaker could really come important for the White Sox. But Chris Getz still believes with the team that he's got. And to your point, Jim, it's not 2020. He did add 4 players. So this isn't a repeat of Rick Hahn just adding one guy and then lamenting that, well, the market didn't work out our way. He did make things happen.
Hey, for the families out there looking for a new path to help your child succeed, take a look at K-12 powered schools. K-12 offers tuition-free, accredited online public education for students in kindergarten through 12th grade, all in a setting that works for your family. And they've been a leader in online education for over 25 years, serving over 3 million families. And Todd, Father, you've raved about the homeschooling experience.
Hey, if you're a busy family, K-12 is where it's at. I've had a couple of my children who've been homeschooled. It's a fantastic opportunity for them not only to get better in school, but timely fashion too, and make some new friends. K-12 has every opportunity to make your child better and smarter as they move forward in their academic career.
See how K-12 powered schools can help unlock your child's full potential. Enroll online today at k12.com/FOUL. That's the letter K, the number 12.com/FOUL, k12.com/FOUL.
So let's break down as far as we already did a complete episode on Luis Castillo. You could watch that on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. We spent about 45 minutes talking about the Luis Castillo trade. Again, he'll be making the start for the White Sox at his White Sox debut on Thursday. But the first trade, I guess, on the deadline after midnight, Huascar Brazoban, the reliever for the New York Mets, he's having a solid season. Baseball Reference has him at a 1.6 WAR, a 2.56 earned run average. If you're more of a FIP guy, 3.34. That's solid still for a reliever. 52 2/3 innings in 46 appearances. And as James mentioned earlier, the White Sox gave up Gabe Davis and Zach Franklin. So when it comes to Brazoban, obviously trading Sir Anthony Dominguez over to Seattle, James, opened up a spot in the bullpen. Why Brazoban was targeted by the White Sox to fill that need?
Well, I mean, he gets ground balls. That's certainly a useful archetype as far as relievers. And what's still kind of a hitter's park, the White Sox. He is he's for a rebuilding team like the Mets. He's 36 years old, so you can definitely make the argument that he doesn't fit in your window, so to speak. But at the same time, like he's pretty early on into his service time because he hasn't really been in the majors much. He'll be ARB eligible for the first time next season. So probably under $5 million as far as what at this point looks like a proven leverage reliever and someone who pitched very well in the WBC even before the season. It wasn't even bad last year. He had 63 innings of being like an above average reliever, even though he started in AAA. So it's kind of a proven arm. It's maybe not, because it's more ground ball oriented, maybe a little bit more affordable in terms of it's not someone who has the misbats level where you're getting charged closer prices necessarily, even if maybe that's what Gabe Davis becomes at some point. So I think it fit the sweet spot for their cost, effectiveness. It's kind of like a stable operation. They just had the super long arm action of Sir Anthony Dominguez. Now you have a short strider who kind of just funky, and the control's a little bit fringy and similar the way to Sir Anthony Dominguez, but just maybe more of a not being so bat missing oriented. He kind of just challenge guys in the zone with his sinker and hope he gets ground balls and gets guys out in front of his changeup. You needed a reliever after you traded Sir Anthony away in some way, even if you had lost faith in Sir Anthony Dominguez kind of becoming that figure, yet that leverage arm, whether or not you believed in the last 10 outings in a big way. And this replaces it adequately it's not a easy cost because there's a seller's market, and I think Davis has some real ceiling there that might be untapped, but it's maybe more on the reasonable side than other options might have been, and certainly just weren't many options at all. I mean, Mason Miller didn't wind up moving. I don't think you saw like a huge wave of relievers.
You did.
In a way, and you're not absorbing salary either, so that's probably a value over Jeff Hoffman, even though the Twins did get a little bit of a salary contribution for Hoffman. Hoffman just in general just feels like backbreaking home run material, even though all of his numbers are awesome. I know I wouldn't be rest easy writing recaps with him in the ninth or anything like that. So this seems more reasonable.
So Jim, should the working assumption be that Joey Bart takes over as the primary catcher for the White Sox until Kyle Teal returns?
You would think so. The way they played Romo over Caro, even though Caro has been, I would say, noticeably better at bat, even though Caro himself is not hitting well, and that's how bad Romo's been for the last 3 months, basically. But you think Caro had a good game. Caro had a big hit. Surely this is when the corner is going to turn, but the White Sox aren't rushing towards that corner. They've played Romo, half of 4-game series and 2 out of 3 and pretty much every 3-game series. So they do seem to like something that Romo offers. I mean, he's got an obvious framing advantage when it comes to StatCast, but just even perhaps some softer stuff, preparation, perhaps they like that more, to where it seems fairly automatic that Romo's going to be starting no matter how poorly he's hitting. So yeah, I think you would hope that Bart would come in and be, if not automatic 2 out of 3, like handedness 2 out of 3, or just day game after night game. Just, if it's a normal series, 2 night games and a day game, that he would start 2 of those games, you would hope. And you would think that he would perform well enough. Like he's a catcher. That's kind of what it jumps out to me, is that it reminds me of the Family Guy store brand Frosted Flakes with Terry the Tiger. And he jumps out saying, "It's food." And Joey Bart is the food of catchers, of that he'll do. Like, you're not in terrible shape if he's back there. And the White Sox have been in terrible shape largely, and they've gotten by despite Teal only playing 19 games, but it does feel like the bottom could fall out any time. And so this is something to address it, and it cost them, like Davitt, I think there are a lot of Davitts in AAA and kind of going back and forth. I think like Tyler Schweitzer is kind of a left-handed Davitt, or probably perhaps he's evolved next stage, but of that can throw 2 or 3 innings. Not going to see leverage, but flexible, happy to pitch whenever, will throw strikes, and hopefully contacts on his side. Like, he's already serving that Davitt purpose, so he gets DFA'd and turns into somebody they can use. And I think it's kind of a no-brainer trade, even if it's not, Adley Rutschman to Boston level exciting.
And then the third piece of the deadline, outfielder Brenton Doyle, who has won a Gold Glove. He's played outstanding defense in center field for the Rockies. He had an excellent 2024 season. This season, dealing with some injuries, Doyle has played in 45 games, 129 plate appearances, batting .214 with a .287 on-base percentage and a .282 slugging percentage. Doyle only has 1 home run and 5 RBIs. He's worth -0.4 WAR, and the White Sox sent over Mason Adams as part of the deal to Colorado. So James, when I look at the White Sox current roster, I mean, technically they have 6 outfielders now. So you got Doyle, Tristan Pierce,
Not anymore.
Sam Antonacci, hold on, Braden Montgomery, Randall Grichuk, and Andrew Benintendi. Now, you can make the case that Benintendi and Grichuk really are just now platooning DH, but technically they can play outfield. If they have to play in the field, you would have them play in the outfield. So why Brenton Doyle?
I thought I was going to get asked my opinion, and now I'm being put in the position to defend it. Well, I think if you put it like that, like clearly they would probably feel like that's the best center field defender of the mix potentially, or at least someone who's been equal to Peters in the past. And I think you're banking on like once he's healthy that he's going to be that again. Like he's not filling the Austin Hayes, Randall Grichuk role of like someone who starts in an outfield corner at DH against a left-handed starter. It's someone who you can pull Peters and have someone who's as good or better in center when you do, or you can play them both and it's like a death to flying things type of alignment what they had when they put Derek Hill out as a defensive replacement late in games. You've seen the bat be like this nice like power over hit plus defense combination in past in his career. There's also stretches before that and after that where it looked like, well, this is too Adam Engel-y in terms of this is like the early years of Adam Engel as opposed to like the cool years of Adam Engel. And I say this is like I still think just get him healthy, train him for 4 weeks. Maybe Adam Engel steps in and is the best player in the league. I'm a huge Adam Engel stan, but even then, like it's erratic, and they clearly have a plan to get him back to probably more 2024 form. They think there's things they can shave down with his loading action and clean up his bat path, and there's raw power there. And in the past, he's not chased and kind of what the struggles and something that fits for a guy who's been out injured and not really gotten a rhythm. So he's chasing more this year, and so if that goes back to normal, maybe you have something here. That said, like you ever see the movie Flow? It's kind of like doesn't have any dialogue. It has like the cat where the world's flooding, and there's the lemur that's like shuffling through like shiny objects and like in this bag and trying to like pick out the best one, seemingly like without reason. That's been like glove first right-handed outfielders with the White Sox really since they claimed Derek Hill off waivers last September. Of like they grab different ones and you think like, okay, this is a project now, and then they shuffle to a new one. It's like, all right, like it's like you can definitely make the argument like this is maybe the best defender of the group. Maybe Derek Hill's pretty good too, but you kind of just watch them trade Derek Hill because Everson Pereira was coming off the IL, and then Everson Pereira comes back and gets hurt, and then you have to go with Junior Perez for an uncomfortable period of time, and that obviously wasn't the plan. Then you get Everson Pereira back, and as he has when he's come back, he's been keyed up and been chasing and striking out a lot. And then we just saw it, and like one game should assess it. They already had obviously been working on this for days, but you just saw what you were supposed to like be working for with him, taking that close fastball from Kimbrel and then launching one and then hitting a home run later in garbage time. But there's as I know Doyle has had like the literal like 3 to 4 win season already in the majors before, and Pereira never has done that before, and certainly hasn't given you a testament for being healthy or being able to be healthy through this one. It's just that there was offensive potential there that, or at least the prospect pedigree is such that never was really associated with Doyle in the same way. Like the idea was that Pereira was going to be someone who was going to be above average hitter, even if he moved to a corner down the road, at least if he got to contact enough places that his power played up. Doyle clearly has power. What we're trying to get back to is a guy who is kind of like league average offensively and like 20 runs above average defensively. And certainly if you think Peters is kind of struggling and you don't know what your long-term center field picture is, and there's not really an answer in the system, I can kind of talk myself into the project of why still being on the hunt for a full-time center fielder makes sense. I get it. It is still just kind of it's awkwardly timed for sure, and especially for someone who was kind of very intrigued by what Everson Pereira could be if they got him right, because they had like cleaned up some things and the contact rate was better, and we hadn't seen him like make swing decisions on the level he had in the past. I was like, man, if we could just get him healthy and all put together, this you kind of see flashes of this being a really interesting bat. And to just get like one more taste of it and then be like, actually, we canceled this project 2 days ago. Here comes Doyle. It's like, man, all right. And it's kind of for him to be replaced in that way. It's kind of a adjustment to realize like Doyle's going to kind of need the same runway and tweak to make his contact rate better, and time to like really get playing time so he stops chasing as much as he was early in the year. Seemingly all the things you're working through with Pereira, you're kind of starting again, but there is a defensive ceiling to chase here that I guess I get. It's just, I get it. I don't hate it. I also could also just very easily see not doing it. And I don't think the prospect cost was like crazy, but it also wasn't like nothing. Like if Mason Adams, I think more was like nice, good 5th, 6th starter depth rather than like someone who's going to become a star, at least of all that particular profile in Coors. But is a useful guy that we were kind of looking forward to seeing for a while. And the DSL guy, I'm not quite like so scarred by Fernando Tatis or Yoko Fajardo that I think every DSL guy going out is going to be awesome, but like certainly interesting in terms of like the hit tool profile. I don't know if like I think his like max exit velo for the year was like 97, so obviously like a lot of way to go for that to be like major league caliber power, and maybe it's just not worth worrying about. But it's like this seemed like not a big cost, but a cost to go to a similar type of project. But I get it, I see it as much as I sound like I don't.
For all White Sox fans, what grade would you give the Chicago White Sox 2026 trade activity? A, B, C, or D? I didn't list an F because the White Sox actually did something. They did pull off trades. So I think that automatically eliminates an F. If you get an F as a team at the trade deadline, you either sold too much for very little return or you didn't do anything. There are some teams that do deserve an F at the trade deadline. But for a White Sox perspective, the winner, very close, C, ended up winning the poll out of 691 votes on social media. 47% of you gave the White Sox a C. 42% of you gave the White Sox a B. So I have a feeling on how you two will answer this, but let's go ahead and give out our grades for the White Sox trade deadline. James Fegan, what grade would you give Chris Getz for the 2026 trade deadline activity?
What do you think I would give Chris Getz, since you have the feeling?
B minus. B minus. Right in between B and C.
My AP US history teacher tried to argue to us that like C was a respectable grade because it's literally just like you met expectations, you did what you were supposed to do, and they're like, this is a really hard course, and also it's weighted, and you get a 4 on your GPA anyway for a C. So why are your parents yelling at me? I think for people who are working hard and want to view like that, yeah, I think the more common perception is a B is a acceptable, like you're marking that I did my assignment, like I met expectations, and an A is a exceeds expectations. So I think the White Sox, because I'm a normal person, unlike my AP US history teacher, would get a B because like they did what they were supposed to. They added in all the areas they were supposed to. They absorb salary to avoid their prospect costs. I don't like, as much as like people say prospect hugging, like the idea that they should be somewhat prudent in what they spend. Like we're not asking them to like swing all the way to Dombrowski. Like I think it's I don't think like it's an absurd thing that was a level of control they were trying to have throughout the process. I don't think like, oh man, they're cowards for not trading Caleb Bonham. Caleb Bonham is an amazing interview. I hope they never trade him. I don't care what they need to do to rejigger the roster around him. Keep him around. So I think like they deserve a B, even if like I have quibbles for why like every move doesn't quite hit like the sweet spot for like, man, this is gonna be awesome. Maybe I can get the Huascar Brazoban, like especially if he comes out the gate hot. I think it's a pretty good trade, but I think they did everything they were supposed to do, at least to like the standard level you would have for acceptability at all of them. So I'd say a B, and CPS didn't give out pluses or minuses, so neither will I. Chicago, baby.
All right. Okay. So I was kind of close. Jim, what grade would you give the White Sox trade deadline activity?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Bonham being an amazing interview and not wanting him to get traded. I talked to the Knights I talked to over the past week, like talked to Davitt, he got traded, talked to Adams, he got traded. And the best interview of all, like the guy who filled up my recorder, was Ryan Galaney. I'm just like hoping like they're kind of trading from the Glaney tier. I'm really hoping that this piece I have lined up in my head of just like a really engaging guy is just all for naught because he gets dealt before I have time to go through it and put it in a compelling order. So fortunately, Ryan Galaney is still around, and that piece will still be relevant for a little bit. But I think I'm going to go, if we go with hard grades, no plus or minus, I think I'll take the C side of it, in the sense that C is, it's a passing grade. It's not going to get you into the good colleges, I guess, if you really pay attention to the GPA that much, or if you don't, load up on extracurriculars. But it does get you through, which I think this does. And to go back to the Luis Castillo conversation, like I'm a little bit, between him and Doyle, I think there might be a little too clever by half approach to this of just, Castillo, they beat him twice this year. They beat the Mariners 3 times. They beat Castillo twice in the shape that he's in. So it feels a little bit like, well, we were able to take advantage of his vulnerabilities, but certainly we'll solve them by the time it matters. With the way their pitching development has been really uneven this year, I'm not sure I want to put that much trust into it. And should his decline continue unabated, then that's a pretty big salary they're looking at. And, we'll see if they can work around it or try to mitigate it, remove it. But they've struggled to do that in the past when it comes to spending past a problem. Same thing with Brenton Doyle. Like, if he's coming off a season, in the Adam Engel Adam Engel had a lot of different seasons. There's a lot of different Adam Engel comparisons you can make between his peak and his very, very beginning, and the very beginning of the rebuild of the 2016 or 2017, I should say, where he was playing because they had nobody else who could play center field. And if he drops back into one of those lesser Engel modes, then it feels like either a little bit of an overinvestment or just kind of an idea they still don't quite know what they're doing in the outfield. And, Peters kind of sinks and Doyle isn't good, or he gets hurt again. And they lost Pereira and they might lose Hayes depending on how it unfolds, and just their depth is a mess. So I think those are two that I'm kind of looking at with a little bit of side eye, but not enough to where, like, I can understand why they did it. It just, they haven't built up the reps, I guess, of proving they can do it. They've been able to turn over some stones and find something valuable that other teams maybe weren't looking at. But mid-season, trying to fix the plane in midair, I don't know if I can, take that leap of faith to say, like, yeah, they're going to nail this. I'm going to give it a C grade, just because I feel like it could work out in a way that kind of falls apart on them, and I want to represent that viewpoint, even if I don't think it's a disaster that a C grade might kind of imply, depending on how you view a C.
My grade is going to be a C plus, because this trade deadline heavily.
You're doing what you accused us of doing, split in the middle.
I am going to be splitting the
accused,
because this trade deadline heavily leans on Luis Castillo. Joey Bart's impact will be limited. Brenton Doyle, I understand, White Sox, what you want to do. Everything that you have mentioned is spring training. I have no idea how you're going to help Brenton Doyle fix his swing when you couldn't help Edgar Caro and Drew Romo fix their offensive issues. So my confidence in Brenton Doyle being an offensive impact is zilch. Please just catch the ball. That's your job from August until the postseason for the very few innings that you'll be playing, because I don't think there's any reason to disrupt the playing time of Sam Antonacci, Tristan Peters, and Brady Montgomery. Brazoban, I think that's a good addition for the White Sox. I like that move. If Luis Castillo deals and he finds his older version, especially the 2023 through 2025 edition of Luis Castillo, then this trade deadline could be awesome for the White Sox. If he continues to pitch the way that he has, well, then it invites really difficult conversations going into this offseason if it pretty much handcuffs what Chris Getz can do, because they have this big contract for Luis Castillo on the books, and maybe the White Sox didn't generate that much money this season that they can't go and spend more in free agency. So I think this trade deadline really rests on Luis Castillo. I am cautiously optimistic that the White Sox can make that fix because Castillo is a veteran and he's had that proven success. I don't know why he's struggling so much this season, but he is the perfect type of pitcher that we've talked about in previous episodes. What happens if you take someone that doesn't have a sure role or is in a bad team situation where the team continues to lose and you trade them to a contender? Do they get a second wind? I think Luis Castillo is going to get a second wind, but I understand your point, Jim, as far as a little bit, the glass is half empty. If he doesn't, this deadline doesn't look all that great, especially if Cleveland gets the boost that we think that they will with Foster Griffin and Joe Adell. But if Castillo really pitches well, then James is going to be right on the money, that this is going to be a B trade deadline. They got an impact player in Luis Castillo. Brazoban will help solidify the bullpen. Bart, Doyle, I mean, they're depth guys. The impact for both of them will be limited. It's really on Kyle Teal to not hurt himself again during rehab and get back to the White Sox as soon as possible. And everybody stop having cold streaks as far as at the plate, Tristan Peters. So that's how I feel as far as the trade deadline. You guys have let us know how you feel about the White Sox trade deadline, but it's over. And now we can get back to focusing on the games. This is a huge week for the Chicago White Sox. We'll be recapping the series in Boston. The Red Sox have just been unconsciously on fire right now. So this would be a tough series for the White Sox, but we thought the series in Tampa Bay would have been tough as well. And the White Sox ended up winning that series. And of course, the big one this upcoming weekend is the Cleveland Guardians coming to town. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. If you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. This is a video podcast now, so you can watch the show on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. Thank you to everyone that in the last couple of days has been watching our videos. We greatly appreciate that. Again, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. Follow us on social media. We're on all the social media platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James Fegan at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. And if you enjoy our work and want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox and Major League Baseball, especially more reactions and interviews and why the White Sox did what they did heading into the trade deadline, sign up to become a Sox Machine subscriber at soxmachine.com/products, where your first month is just 53 cents. And then it'll be $5 a month afterwards. We also have additional tiers of support. Our Veterans Committee was getting a lot of the whispers and gossip, the gossipers heading up into the deadline. So we still have some spots open in our VC if you are interested in joining. Again, go to soxmachine.com/product and sign up today. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of soxmachine.com. You're for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Foul Territory Network. Alongside Jim Margalus and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.